Gene Hackman didn't just act in movies, he made a mark on Hollywood. With 2 Oscars and unforgettable roles, he was known for being serious about his work, always pushing for the best. But here's the catch, he wasn't afraid to speak up and walk away from anyone who didn't meet his standards. Curious to know which 7 co-stars and directors learned the hard way that with Hackman, it was always his way or nothing. The first person on Gene Hackman's Never Again list was Wes Anderson. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, they made the Royal Tenenbaums together. That movie was great. It got amazing reviews. How bad could it have been? Well, let me tell you, it was bad. Really bad. Wes Anderson was a young director with big ideas. He had a very specific way he wanted things done. Everything had to be perfect. Every shot had to look just right. Every color had to match. He was what people call a perfectionist. But Gene Hackman? He was old school. He had worked with legends like Francis Ford Coppola and Norman Jewison. And this young guy with his quirky ideas? Hackman wasn't having it. From the very first day of shooting, there were problems. Hackman didn't like Anderson's style. He didn't like being told how to do his job by someone half his age. And he definitely didn't like all the weird little details Anderson obsessed over. So what did Hackman do? He started questioning everything. He challenged Anderson in front of the whole crew. He called him names. He made fun of his vision. And he treated him like he didn't know what he was doing. The other actors noticed it right away. Owen Wilson, Angelica Huston, Ben Stiller. They all saw what was happening. And they tried to help. They tried to keep the peace. They would pull Hackman aside and say, hey, just give him a chance. They would talk to Anderson and tell him to be patient. But it didn't help. The damage was done. Hackman had made up his mind. This guy wasn't worth his time. When the movie finally wrapped, everyone was relieved. The film turned out great. Critics loved it. Audiences loved it. But Hackman? He wanted nothing to do with it. More importantly, he wanted nothing to do with Wes Anderson. Word spread quickly in Hollywood. Gene Hackman would never work with Wes Anderson again. Not in a million years. The second person on the list was John Travolta. And this one surprised a lot of people. After all, Get Shorty was a huge hit. The movie made tons of money. Everyone involved looked good. So what went wrong? Simple. John Travolta didn't know his lines. Now, you have to understand something about Gene Hackman. The man was a professional. When he showed up on set, he knew every single line. Not just his lines. Everyone's lines. He knew the whole script by heart. That's how serious he was about his work. So when he showed up ready to film and Travolta wasn't prepared, that was a problem. A big problem. It started small. Travolta would mess up a line here and there. No big deal, right? Everyone makes mistakes. But then it kept happening. Take after take after take. The same scenes over and over because Travolta couldn't remember what he was supposed to say. And every time they had to do another take, that cost money, that wasted time. That frustrated everyone on set. Hackman tried to be patient at first. He really did. But after a while, he couldn't take it anymore. During one scene, Travolta messed up his lines for probably the 10th time that day. And Hackman just lost it. He started yelling at Travolta right there in front of everyone. The crew, the other actors, the director, everyone. He told Travolta that he was unprofessional, that he was wasting everyone's time, that if he couldn't be bothered to learn his lines, he shouldn't be there at all. The set went completely silent. No one knew what to say. Travolta was embarrassed. The director tried to calm things down, but Hackman wasn't done. He made it clear that this was unacceptable. That in his day, actors came prepared. That memorizing lines was the bare minimum of what an actor should do. Get Shorty finished filming and the movie did great. But the relationship between Hackman and Travolta was destroyed. Hackman told people in the industry that he would never work with Travolta again. He said Travolta didn't respect the craft. And for Gene Hackman, that was the worst thing you could say about an actor. The third person might shock you. It was William Friedkin, the director of The French Connection. Yes, that French Connection. The movie that won Hackman his first Oscar. The movie that made him a superstar. You would think they got along great, right? Wrong. In fact, Hackman actually quit the movie after just 2 days of filming. William Friedkin was known for being intense. Some people said he was a genius. Other people said he was crazy. But everyone agreed on one thing. He pushed his actors hard. Really hard. Sometimes too hard. He would do whatever it took to get the performance he wanted. He would yell. He would insult people. He would even put actors in dangerous situations just to get a real reaction. Hackman knew Friedkin had a reputation, but he didn't know just how bad it would be until they started filming. Friedkin wanted everything to feel real, so he would surprise Hackman with things during takes. He would change the script without warning. He would create chaos on set and then film Hackman's genuine reaction. And Hackman hated it. After 2 days, Hackman had enough. He walked off the set and told the producers he was done. He said he couldn't work with someone who treated actors like puppets. The producers panicked. They had already spent a lot of money. They couldn't lose their lead actor, so they begged Hackman to come back. They promised him more control. They promised Friedkin would ease up. Eventually, Hackman agreed to return. But things didn't really get better. Throughout the entire shoot, Hackman and Friedkin fought constantly. Hackman walked off set multiple times. There were days when filming had to stop because they couldn't agree on how to do a scene. It was a nightmare for everyone involved. But somehow, they finished the movie, and it turned out to be a masterpiece. Hackman won the Oscar. The film won Best Picture. It became a classic, but none of that mattered to Hackman. He swore he would never work with Friedkin again, and he didn't. Even when Friedkin tried to get him for other projects, Hackman refused. He said that no movie was worth that kind of abuse, that there were limits to what he would put up with, even for great art. And William Friedkin had crossed those limits. The fourth person on Gene Hackman's list was Barbara Hershey. They worked together on Hoosiers, one of the best sports movies ever made. Hackman played a basketball coach trying to turn around a small-town team. It's an incredible performance. But behind the scenes, things were far from perfect. People who worked on Hoosiers say that Hackman and Hershey didn't get along at all. They barely spoke to each other off camera. When they had to do scenes together, they were professional. But the second Hoosiers became a beloved classic. People still watch it today. But for Hackman, it was tainted by his experience with Hershey. After the movie wrapped, he made it known that he had no interest in ever working with her again. They avoided each other at industry events. When interviewers asked about the film, they would talk about the story and the other cast members, but never about each other. The fifth person was Luke Wilson. And yes, this was also from the Royal Tenenbaums. So you can imagine how difficult that set must have been for Hackman. First he's dealing with Wes Anderson, and then he's also got problems with Luke Wilson. Luke Wilson was going through some personal stuff during filming. He had a crush on Gwyneth Paltrow, who was also in the movie, and that crush was messing with his head. He couldn't focus. He kept forgetting his lines. He wasn't giving good performances. And Hackman noticed all of it. For Hackman, this was unacceptable. He didn't care what was going on in Wilson's personal life. When you're on set, you do your job. You be professional. You don't let your personal problems affect your work. That's what Hackman believed. And Wilson was breaking that rule. Hackman started getting more and more frustrated with Wilson. He would sigh loudly when Wilson messed up. He would make comments under his breath. And eventually, he started being openly critical. He told Wilson to get his act together. He said Wilson was wasting everyone's time, that if he couldn't handle being professional, he shouldn't be there. But there was something else going on too. Hackman saw Wilson as part of a new generation of actors. A generation that didn't have the same work ethic, that didn't have the same dedication, that thought being in movies was supposed to be fun and easy. And that really bothered Hackman. He had worked hard his entire career. He had struggled for years before making it big. And here was this young guy who seemed to take it all for granted. By the end of filming, Hackman was done with Luke Wilson. He told people that Wilson represented everything wrong with modern Hollywood. That young actors today didn't understand what it meant to be professional, that they didn't respect the craft. And he made it clear he would never work with Wilson again. The sixth person on the list was Kumar Pallana. Now, you might not know who Kumar Pallana is. He wasn't a big star. He was a character actor who appeared in several Wes Anderson movies. He had a very unusual style, very eccentric, very quirky. And Wes Anderson loved that about him. But Gene Hackman? He couldn't stand it. Hackman thought Pallana was ridiculous. He thought his acting was over the top and weird. He thought it was unprofessional. And he didn't understand why Anderson kept encouraging it. Pallana would do these strange things on set. He would improvise in weird ways. He would make unusual choices with his character, and Anderson would be thrilled. He would say, "Yes, that's perfect, do more of that." But Hackman would be standing there thinking, "What is this nonsense? This isn't acting. This is just being weird for the sake of being weird." The frustration built up over time. Every time Hackman had to do a scene with Polana, he would get irritated. He would shake his head. He would complain to other people on set. He felt like Polana was making a joke out of the whole process. And Hackman took acting very seriously. He didn't think it was a joke. For Hackman, acting required discipline. It required training. It required understanding your character and the story. Polana's approach seemed to ignore all of that. It seemed random and self-indulgent. And Hackman had no patience for it. When the Royal Tenenbaums finished, Hackman added Kumar Polana to his list of people he would never work with again. The seventh and final person on Gene Hackman's list wasn't even an actor. It was a screenwriter named W. Peter Iliff. They worked together on a movie called Proof of Life, and they almost came to actual physical violence. It happened during rehearsals. Hackman was reading through the script, and he had problems with some of the dialogue. He thought the lines didn't sound natural. He thought his character wouldn't say things that way, so he brought it up with Iliff. He suggested some changes. He explained his concerns. He thought it would be a normal creative discussion, but Iliff didn't want to hear it. He defended every word he had written. He told Hackman that the script was fine the way it was. He basically told Hackman to just say the lines as written and stop complaining, and that set Hackman off. Hackman started arguing back. He said he had been doing this for decades, that he knew his character better than anyone, that a good writer should be open to input from actors. The argument got louder and louder. Both men were getting angry, and then it got physical. They didn't actually hit each other, but they got close. They were in each other's faces. They were yelling. They had to be pulled apart by other people in the room. It was a complete disaster. Rehearsals had to be stopped for the day. Everyone went home angry. The producers worked hard to smooth things over. They talked to both men separately. They tried to find a compromise. Eventually, they got things back on track enough to make the movie. But the relationship between Hackman and Iliff was destroyed. They avoided each other for the rest of the production. When they absolutely had to communicate, they did it through other people. For Hackman, this situation proved something he had always believed. Writers who won't listen to actors are writers who don't really understand filmmaking. He felt that making a movie should be collaborative, that everyone should be able to contribute ideas, that the final product should be better because of everyone's input. And Iliff had refused to do that. After Proof of Life, Hackman made it very clear that he would never work on anything involving W. Peter Iliff again. He told other actors to be careful if they worked with him. He said Iliff was too proud and too stubborn to be a good collaborator. So there you have it. 7 people Gene Hackman refused to ever work with again. 7 people who, for one reason or another, crossed a line with him. 7 people who learned the hard way that Gene Hackman didn't mess around when it came to his standards. Looking at this list, you can see some patterns. Hackman couldn't stand people who weren't prepared. He couldn't stand people who didn't take the work seriously. He couldn't stand people who were difficult for no good reason. And he couldn't stand people who wouldn't listen or collaborate. These were his rules, and if you broke them, you were done. No second chances, no forgiveness. Done. Some people might say Hackman was too harsh, that he should have been more patient, that he should have been more understanding. After all, everybody has bad days. Everybody makes mistakes. Why hold such hard grudges? But that wasn't how Hackman saw it. For him, this was about respect. Respect for the craft. Respect for the other people on set. Respect for the audience who would eventually watch the movie. If you didn't have that respect, you didn't deserve to work with him. Gene Hackman retired from acting in 2004. He was done with Hollywood. He moved away from Los Angeles. He started writing novels. He lived a quiet life away from all the chaos and drama of the film industry. And you know what? A big part of why he retired was because he felt like Hollywood had changed. He felt like the old standards didn't matter anymore. Like people cared more about being famous than being good at their job. And he didn't want to be part of that. In his final years, Hackman lived peacefully in New Mexico. He wasn't making movies anymore. He wasn't going to premieres or award shows. He was just living his life. But people who knew him say he never regretted his decisions. He never looked back and wished he had been nicer to Wes Anderson or more patient with John Travolta. He stood by every choice he made, every person he refused to work with, every bridge he burned, because for Gene Hackman, maintaining his standards was more important than anything else. When news of his death spread in February 2025, tributes poured in from all over the world. Directors talked about how brilliant he was. Actors talked about how much they learned from him. Critics talked about his incredible body of work. 2 Academy Awards, 5 Oscar nominations, dozens of unforgettable performances. He left behind an amazing legacy. But his legacy isn't just about the great movies he made. It's also about the example he set. He showed that you don't have to put up with things that go against your values. That you can say no, that you can walk away, that you can have standards and stick to them. Even when it's hard. Even when it costs you opportunities. Even when people call you difficult. Was Gene Hackman difficult to work with? Yes, absolutely. There's no denying that. He made people's lives harder. He created tension on sets. He hurt feelings. He burned bridges. But here's the thing, he was also one of the greatest actors who ever lived.